Three, two, one. Welcome to Backseat Directing,
where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
We're your hosts,
Andrew
and Arron.
And today we're talking about the 2018 film Tag.
3, 2, 1, action.
I missed the action there, but that's okay.
Yeah, you didn't say it, but we got the clap right without it falling like we did last episode.
We'll get
so
it
that's
fully
good. Yeah, we're
eventually.
getting better. We forgot to talk about how we're gonna try to add in that we release a new episode every Monday and Thursday in our intro. So this is me mentioning every Monday and Thursday you can expect a new episode.
Yeah, I thought you meant to mention it like now, like this still is part of the intro.
Oh,
but
no.
yeah, but so we do those episodes 2 a week, and we'll do bonus episodes sometimes. In this instance, this episode should be coming out Thursday. We're going to be talking about a comedy for, I think, the first time, a pure comedy movie.
Yeah.
Which is, this movie has a lot of action, but it's the first time we're talking about one that's predominantly a comedy, and it's Tag, a great movie that I think is a hilarious blend of action and comedy and just beautiful filmmaking. I'm going to take what may be a crazy stance here, but I think this is my favorite comedy movie of all time. It came out in 2018, and I've already seen it like 3 or 4 times. I do really love Superbad, and I put that up there in my top 5 for sure, but this movie is a lot more playful and has innocence combined with the R-rated aspects. So where does this movie rank for you? What do you think about it?
This is one of my favorites too, and I'm not a comedy person. I don't really like comedy movies.
It makes you sound so like, I don't like comedy. What is that noise you're making?
Yeah.
I do not enjoy laughter.
What is a laugh? I haven't laughed in 30 years. Wait, you're not 30. Exactly. But yeah, like, I don't know, like, the stupid, funny kind of jokes don't normally land for me in a lot of comedies and stuff. But this is one of the comedies that sticks out in my head to where if you were to ask, like, hey, what are some of your favorite comedies? This is definitely one that kind of comes to mind. I was excited when you asked if we could do this episode, because it meant I got to rewatch this movie. And I like this movie a lot. And I remember I love it when I go into a movie not expecting anything and then coming out and it's like, that was a fun time. Yeah, and that was definitely this movie the first time that I watched it.
What I think is special about this movie is not just the action elements that they combine with the comedy, because the director said when he set out to make this movie, the director's Jeff Tomsik, he said he wanted to create a comedy, not necessarily an action comedy, but a comedy that was also an action movie. You know, so Rush Hour is like an action comedy. It has a lot of action. But this movie is just a comedy that uses elements from movies like Sherlock Holmes or Mission Impossible or even Home Alone, like, to give adventure and action in kind of a different way, I would say, than the traditional action comedy like Rush Hour.
But I feel like this movie is more of a comedy.
It is.
And I like it
I agree.
that way.
Yeah.
You know, like, it doesn't seem like it's an action film that's trying to be funny.
Yeah.
I
think what's special about the comedy in this movie is that, to me, it feels like you're one of the guys. It feels like you're a member of the group. The way they shoot the movie, the way the jokes are, I think it's a lot of light chuckles and not as many belly laughs. But I think, to me, that feels so comfortable watching a movie, because that's how it is when you're hanging out with a group of friends that you know really well. You know, you give each other a hard time and you make fun of each other, and you know, it just rolls off the tongue. It's effortless, like it is in this movie, and you feel like you're sitting there amongst the group, like laughing at the jabs they're giving each other. And I think that they replicate that feeling of like an old friendship and nostalgia really well in this movie.
Yeah, they all have really good chemistry on screen.
They really do. And Jake Johnson said that they only met a few days before the start of production, and he said he thought it was going to be difficult because the one thing he worried about going into the movie was if there was going to be a lot of comedic chemistry between so many people. It's an ensemble cast. There's 5 main guys, and he was worried about that going in, but he said that even after just a few days of knowing each other, they went into filming and it felt natural. So I think that it shows on screen. It's why the movie's so funny, because of the cast.
Yeah, I agree. one of the things that makes this movie so interesting is that it's based on an actual group of friends that have been playing tag for 20 plus years, 30 plus years. How cool is that?
It's a real Wall Street Journal article. Like, you watch the movie, and I didn't believe it until the very end.
Right.
When they showed the clips of them, I'm like, this must actually be a true story.
Yeah. That was so cool. But yeah, basically this movie is about a group of friends that have been playing tag for 30 years, the same game. And they play tag in the month of May every single year. So it's only 1 month long. And I think kind of bringing it down to 1 month is what makes it happen every year. You know, like if it was just a year-long game or something, like it probably wouldn't have lasted as long as it did. But for that 1 month, they're all ultra competitive, and it's the thing that brings them all together because they don't live all in the same place anymore.
Yeah.
So they just kind of show up randomly in your everyday life. Like one of the opening scenes is one of the characters showing up during an interview and they're like running around the desk playing tag, and the lady that's conducting the interview is like, what's going on here?
That is, and I'll delve into the real life aspects more, but that part of it is a true story.
Yeah.
Where the guy got promoted, I think, to chief marketing in an insurance company. His friend comes in and tags him, and then they just kind of hug and pat each other on the back because this is their reunion to each other.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, he sits back down. He's like, all right, let's get back into the interview. Like,
yeah. The summary of the story though kind of progresses that the main mission is that these group of friends are trying to tag Jerry Pierce, who's played by Jeremy Renner. And this character has not been tagged in all the 30 years that they've been playing. He is the best that's ever played the game.
The best ever played tag. It's a big assumption. So yeah, they've got this ticking clock that they have to get him before the last midnight on the last day of May. And I think the thing that adds a lot of urgency and competitiveness to the story in real life and the game is that if you're the last person at the end of May, then you're
the loser.
You're it for a year.
Yeah.
You are, until next May, you have to be it. And in real life, they kind of give each other a hard time all year about it.
And Rebecca Cosby is the character who's doing that interview.
Yes.
And I think at one point she asks, like, what do you win? Like, what are you doing this for? And they're all like, oh no, there's no winners. You're just not the loser.
There's no winners, just not losers.
Yeah, which is hilarious because if you ask a lot of like elite athletes and stuff, they all say that the emotional impact of losing is greater than the impact of winning. You know, like they don't want to be the loser more than they want to be the winner.
Yeah. There's a great Brad Pitt line in the movie Moneyball where he says, "Gentlemen, I hate losing. I hate losing even more than I love winning," and there's a difference.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what this game entitles. You know, like it's really fun that they're all ultra competitive about this.
So that is the summary, and we're going to touch on our favorite parts in the plot, but let's get into who is in front of and who's behind the camera in this movie. So some really great people working on this. The director of the movie is Jeff Tomsic. Jeff directs a couple stand-up specials that I saw. There wasn't many movies that I could find in his work, but he directed Burt Kreischer and TJ Miller's stand-up specials, who are two separate comedians. He directs some shorts. So he has a lengthy list of directing works on IMDb, just not a lot of movies up until Tag. And then the cinematographer on this film is Larry Blanford. He interestingly has a lot of work as a second DP, which is, the secondary director of photography. He has a lot of credits as a director of photography for aerial work, so maybe shooting on planes or helicopters or those kind of scenes, because he was involved in Top Gun, the original. So going back to, I think, 1985, that would mean that he's been working with the camera for that long. So some of his credits in here, which are not necessarily for the main director of photography, include a bunch of action films. So 4 X-Men movies: Armageddon, Top Gun, Venom 2, A-Team, Mission Impossible, and Ghost Protocol. And
so he's been around. Yeah,
but this makes a lot of sense, right? That if Jeff Tomsic said he wants to have pure action elements in a comedy movie, you hire an action cinematographer, because like those scenes with Jeremy Renner where he's doing stunts or where time slows down, it is still comedic, but it feels like true action. Like it feels momentous.
Yes.
They treat the game of tag like it is life or death in this, which is going to be a kind of, in a sense, an Easter egg for the end of the film, the plot twist.
Yeah.
But John Hamm, in an interview I saw, he said that they used a lot of wide shots when they filmed the movie, so that the actors could play and improvise. And that way, not only could they capture any improvised line that came from an actor over here on the right, but they could capture the reactions of everybody else in the cast through that. So they probably, on top of shooting wide angles, they probably shot multicam as well, if that was their plan.
Yeah, that's super cool. So who are the actors that are starring in this movie?
So Ed Helms is Hoagie Malloy, kind of the heartbeat of the film. He says that he is the spirit of the game.
The heart and soul.
He seems to love the game the most. He seems to want to bring everyone together.
He's the character that we see first.
Yeah.
Playing the game. He was it last from last year, it seems.
I think he's the leader of the movie, even though you have a big star in Jeremy Renner. I think Ed Helms leads this movie. Jeremy Renner plays Jerry Pierce, who's never been tagged. Jake Johnson is Randy Chiliano, who is kind of the screw up of the group, the pothead, the lazy guy. John Hamm plays Bob Callahan, who is the suit and tie. I believe he works at a insurance company.
Yep.
He's a big hot shot there. Hannibal Buress, the comedian, plays Kevin Sable, who's kind of the neurotic part of the group, kind of the all too in his head, overthinker. Isla Fisher is Anna Malloy, Hoagie's wife. Isla Fisher's incredible in this movie, incredible in everything she's in. Annabelle Wallace is Rebecca Crosby, who does the time story like you talked about. And then we've got Leslie Bibb as Susan Rollins, the wife of Jerry. Rashida Jones as Cheryl Deakins, the love interest for Chili and Bob Callahan. And then a guest appearance, cameo by Sebastian Maniscalco as the pastor, who he is a huge stand-up comedian who like sells out theaters. So clearly the connection there for Jeff Tomsic and the stand-up comedian world, I think, kind of played into that cameo. But it's a superstar-studded cast. Who was your favorites in the movie?
They all bounced off of each other really well.
That's the improvisational style. Like they did so well.
Yeah, and they all seemed like they got good screen time and decent character development. Like you like you said, you felt like you were part of the group. The group had someone for everyone to relate to. Jeremy Renner is great, but I think Jake Johnson was one of my favorite characters to watch. Just his, nonchalant, don't care, but I care kind of attitude that he had. It's really hard to pick a favorite because Ed Helms did really good too. They're all really incredible. I think that my favorite was also Jake Johnson. I know you gave him some. I hate when we have the same favorites. I know you gave him some praise. I just think he's so funny. He says the most outrageous things in the film. I like the way him and Hannibal kind of play off each other, or him and Sable. Yeah. There's a point where they're signing the. What do they call them? The amendments. And Hannibal says, no mention of tag is unreasonable. And Jake Johnson just goes, it's ridiculous. And like just the small, like the way they're just tipped off. Like I laugh so much at like these little interactions with them. So I love both of them. I think that Ed Helms carried a lot of the weight of the movie and Jeremy Renner carried a lot of the weight of the action and the stunts. Right. He's a big action star. He's been in a lot of action movies. Obviously the Avengers is probably the first that everyone thinks of, but he's also been in like The Town. He's been in Hurt Locker. Yes, that's what I was going to say. He was Aaron Cross in The Bourne Legacy. So a lot of big action. Huge action role, so like... I would love to ask him the similarities and differences of being on set for a movie like this, because there's so much action in the movie too. So what are the similarities and differences in a movie like this versus like an Avengers movie? I'd be curious. That'd be a good interview question, I feel like. So let's kind of go into like the ratings and the box office and stuff, and then we'll kind of continue with the story. There's some good aspects. After the ratings and box office, I want to touch on the music real quick. But okay. What was the critical reception of this movie? Tell me about the ratings, runtime, box office. Yeah, so this movie came out in 2018. It is rated R. It has a runtime of 1 hour and 40 minutes, which is a very consumable time. I like it when movies are that length sometimes, where you can just kind of watch it real quick.
Especially for a comedy.
Yeah.
It just you can just enjoy it.
Right, exactly. The IMDb rating is a 6.5 out of 10. The Rotten Tomatoes has it at 56 for the critics, and then 56 for the audience. So tied at 56 for that.
Criminally underrated.
Yeah, I want to talk about the ratings real quick. I feel like ratings for movies need to be rated per their genre.
How successful they were at the comedy elements, because you can't just rate it on the same scale that you rate Shawshank Redemption.
Right.
They're very different movies.
They're different. Yeah, exactly. Like a romantic comedy, a superhero movie, a thriller. Like, you can't put them all on the same playing field. They're all trying to accomplish something completely different. So with that in mind, I think a 6.5 is definitely too low.
Yeah.
Now, out of movies all in general, okay, maybe I see that, but that's not fair. I don't think that's fair.
Yeah.
The movie is better than a 6.5.
Would I put Tag in my top 10 movies of all time? No. But would I say it's a near perfect comedy that definitely deserves above an 8 out of 10?
Yeah, is it like top 3 comedy of all time?
I would say so.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah, it's high up there. So I feel like sometimes ratings are a little misleading.
Yeah.
For that sense, because they just don't take into account every aspect of the movie.
I mean, a 65% is atrocious. Yeah, I would look at that as a failure in my movie. Yeah. I think it deserves way better than that.
Yeah, I feel like 7 to 8 is like, oh, that's a good movie.
Yeah.
8 to 9 is like, that's a movie you gotta watch. And then 9 to 10 is like, that's perfect.
9 to 10 is like iconic cinema.
Yeah,
like The Dark Knight, Godfather.
The budget for this movie was $28 million, and the box office was 78.1. We haven't done a lot of comedies on our podcast here, so I'd be interested to see how that stacks up to other comedies.
I think that's a success. I mean, we just went over Prisoners, which I think was pretty close to the budget, and made a lot more in revenue.
Budget was 46.
Oh, actually, the budget was almost double.
Yes.
But I think that's pretty successful.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
more
almost
than doubled.
it's almost 3 times the budget. I think that is a successful movie. I don't think it's necessary.
Isn't it nice to review a movie that's not $250 million budget? Like, man, and things are getting out of hand, Andrew.
And look at what they could do. Like, how cinematic were those slow motion action scenes? Like, I think they looked fantastic.
Yeah, those were great. That's one of my favorite parts of the movie, for sure. You wanted to talk about the music before we continued.
Yes, thank you for remembering that, because I actually completely forgot. So the music is done by Jermaine Franco, and the main credit that I could find impressive on his sheet was he's a composer of the score for Encanto, which I think is all that he really needs. Very impressive. Amazing music in that movie, but I think that the music in this movie is so fantastic at connecting you to the time period. Because I looked at the soundtrack, every song used in the soundtrack of this movie is from 1995 or before. So,
oh, that's cool.
It's set to a time period, which I felt that watching the movie. I was like, all these songs feel like they're from a certain era. Mm-hmm. And I think they're all from 1984 to 1995. And it's songs that would have been popular when these people were in middle and high school. Like, it's the songs that they were like, and also the songs tie in so well to the feel of the movie, the action or the playfulness or the silliness. Like, after watching this movie, I went and got Mother by Danzig and put it on my Spotify playlist. I was like, this is a great song. Why don't I already have it on my playlist? And it's just so cool because it connects you to this nostalgia, which for us, we weren't born in that time, so it's not quite the same, but I can imagine what it would feel like, and it makes me think of that time period. So I think it's got to be so cool for the guys who the story is based on to watch it, because it's songs from their childhood and their youth.
I was just gonna say, how crazy would it be to be those guys watching this movie that was made based off of your story?
For real.
That's gotta be so fun, to have this kind of comedy action movie based off of this child's game that you've extended into adulthood,
and we can be like, oh, like that, I'm Chili, like Chili's based on me, you're such a Callahan, it's so It's so cool. And the other aspect of the music as well is the original score. So like what you might not hear as much, because that original score is usually more of a feeling. But I went and listened to the original score on Spotify, and it's such a wide range. It's like intense action. Like there's intense action music playing when he's throwing the donuts. He's like, I'm surgical with these complimentary donuts. Intense action music to like when they're like sneaking around at night. It's like do. So it's like the Jermaine Franco perfectly captured like the heavy action tones, and then was also able to seamlessly blend in notes of what I think is most important to the movie is playfulness and, you know, glibness and the childhood elements, like
even the
softer
action
elements.
Is playful.
Exactly,
you know,
yeah.
Like, and I feel like that's what made this movie so good, was that it wasn't trying to be so serious while at the same time being a comedy. I feel like that's how sometimes maybe these movies don't land. It's like kind of like Love and Thunder, you know, like it was so funny all the time. They were cracking jokes that I just didn't take the action seriously. But in this, I did, because the action isn't supposed to be serious.
Yeah.
You
also,
know?
like,
and there's no life or death. It's just the stakes are we have to tag this guy.
Yeah. Well, there's no life or death until the end. So, spoiler alert.
Bum.
I wanted to get more into the themes of the movie.
Yeah.
So the theme of the movie is your inner child. They say a lot. What is the quote? That we don't get old. We don't stop playing because we get old. We get old because we stop playing. And they say it's attributed to Benjamin Franklin, but Sable says actually it's attributed to German psychologist Karl Gross or something like that.
They said, I think 3 or 4 different people said that quote. It's kind of like the Office, where he's like says a quote. It's by...
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Michael Scott, Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so funny. But the whole theme of the movie is keeping the inner child alive, keeping that essence in us, like, because that's such a beautiful thing. Is like that's where our happiness and joy and lightheartedness comes from, and that's something I've always believed. Like if you've met me, I am a child. Like I am a grown child, and I love that about myself, and I wouldn't change that, because I experienced so much joy and happiness through that lens, like playing video games and reading comic books.
I mean, the whole time
singing.
I was watching this movie, I was like, how could I do this with my friends?
How fun would it be? I was like, let's get this started.
Zach and Andrew over here. We need to figure out a way to play this right now.
Get Corey involved, but he'd be such a sitting duck. Like,
yeah, he would lose. He'd be it at the end of May every single time.
But I just think that it's such a beautiful concept that these friends came up with. And like the idea not only of keeping your inner child alive, but keeping those close bonds and friendships from childhood together. Like they've moved apart. They're geographically separated. They now are all in different income brackets, and some have kids, some don't. But this brings them together. And like once a year in the movie and in real life, 1 month a year, they fly across the country to go see each other, and they reunite. And after they tag, there's no tag backs. So they'll go have dinner together and enjoy each other's company. And like, it keeps them connected. It's honestly such a beautiful emotional thing hidden behind like a silly, like,
how
veil.
Many close friends have you kind of lost contact with?
So many.
Just by growing up, and like going in different directions, and like
I have a handful of friends that I went to high school with.
Yeah, and like
I'm only 23.
Yeah, and these people are not living in the same town. They're not even living in the same state, and like you said, this little silly game brings them all together. And it's like, man, like that's so cool that they have this thing to connect with. And like, yeah, it's the silly game, but at the same time, they get to hang out and get updated with each other, but it's a fun way, It's not like, I gotta go see this person from high school again,
pack
like
my bags.
I feel like I don't relate to this person anymore because it's been so long, like things have changed so much, but it's like, no, gotta go play a game.
Yeah.
We gotta go tag this guy. He's never been tagged before.
It's really such beautiful themes of like friendship and maintaining innocence, and like the movie blends it so well. Like I think that one of the best examples is they show a flashback, like, oh, a friend could show up at any time, and they show Hoagie's dad's funeral, and they're all around him, and Chili says, I think your dad would have wanted you to be it. And he tags him, and then like Hoagie like kind of puts his head down, like, and then he starts to like giggle at his dad's funeral. He starts to laugh, and he turns around, and they all run, and he chases them. Like, they turn back into kids in that moment, and like it's something that can put a smile on his face at his dad's funeral. Like, that is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's why I like this movie so much, you know, because it's very relatable in that sense. To where it's like,
it's beautiful. Like, it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of gushy.
Yeah, exactly. What are some other things that you like about this movie? Did you have any other things that it was about that you wanted to talk about?
Yes, so I wanted to talk about the hints for the spoiler. So, spoiler alert again. I'm gonna unveil the entire end.
Someone
of the movie.
told us we're bad at this.
Yeah,
Spoilers.
A close friend.
I think we're good.
So
I think we've gotten much better.
We've covered it this episode. So throughout the movie, you think at the end of the movie that the plot twist is that, or I think her name's Susan, isn't pregnant. She's surprised. It was part of the game. She lied about being pregnant. That is a plot twist. But the real plot twist is that Hoagie, the heart of the game, has cancer and is dying. And he thinks he might not be around for next year's game of tag. So that's why he made up the lie that Jerry was quitting, to get everyone together for a big last hurrah, because he thinks that the next year might be the end of the game, or at least the end of his game.
It kind of upped the stakes too. Like, throughout the movie,
The emotional
like,
stakes, yeah.
Yeah, you're like, oh man, they really need to tag this guy, because it's the last time he's ever playing. Like, you really want him to get tagged, but at the same time, you're like, man, he's so good.
Yeah.
I kind of want him to get away with it.
It's that ticking clock again. But I made a list when I rewatched it of the hints they make that Hoagie is actually sick. So in the beginning, when Bob first hugs him, he says, "Did you lose weight?" And Hoagie says, "Yeah." Which is, you know, a symptom if he has cancer, is going through chemo, or if you're sick in general. Hoagie soon after that says, in reference to Jerry, "We get him now or we die." Hoagie also says, "I've been experimenting with pot lately, mostly medicinal," to Chili, when he joins Chili to smoke. Jerry says, "You're not going to tag me. You're going to die before that ever happens." And Hoagie says back to that, "I don't fear death, Jerry, and I'm not going to give this up till I die." And that's in the scene, that's the last one I have on there, but that's in the scene where he's dressed up as the old lady and he's trying to tag him.
That's so funny. That's a lot of little things that you don't pick up on when you're watching it the first time. And I love it when movies do that, where they pay so close attention to these little itty bitty details that you're probably not going to notice unless you do watch it again and again. You know, like, that's so interesting that they went that far into like this silly comedy show, you know, like,
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even catch some of those. I caught some of them, but not all of them. So like, that's super cool how much detail goes into making a movie, telling a story. And it makes me excited. It makes me want to go tell a story, you know, and like come up with all these intricate details and how to connect all of these characters and stuff. Like, that's so cool.
It is really incredible. And they took real life and obviously dramatized it, but they told a really incredible story.
If you've made it this far, we appreciate you listening. Please head over to our YouTube page, give us a subscription there, and comment down on this video.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening. Now let's get back into the show. So the next thing that we were going to talk about, if you're ready, is we can go into our backseat directing, which is where we talk about what we would change or keep about the movie.
All right, Andrew, you're the director. What would you do differently? What would you keep the same? What do you got?
So what I didn't want to tell you before the episode started is that for the first time ever, I am saying that I would change nothing about this movie.
Oh my God! You're kidding. You're lying. That's not true. You have to have a critique. I don't believe you.
Your reaction lived up to my expectations.
I don't believe you.
So, although
You're telling me this movie is perfect in Andrew's eyes. Nothing's perfect in Andrew's eyes.
Although I'm very critical about movies, I know objectively this movie isn't perfect. Subjectively to me, I would just leave it how it is. In my heart of hearts, I wouldn't change this movie. And that being said, like, The Dark Knight is possibly my favorite movie of all time, and there are still things I would change about this movie. So it's kind of a weird scale, but this movie I would just leave as it is. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, kind of like what we said before. Like, movies should be measured through different criteria. You know, and like, this movie was meant to show a good time between these group of friends that have this game that brings them all together, and they just wanted to show a fun, good story that made you laugh and kept you entertained. And like you said, I think they did a fantastic job of doing so.
I think the other thing the story does is the themes we talked about. It reminds you to keep in touch with your inner child and not let your inner child die. It reminds you to slow down and have fun, and it reminds you to cherish those friendships and those bonds. A lot of people, when this movie came out, were saying that it made them reach, for their phone and call an old acquaintance, call an old family member, call somebody from their hometown they haven't talked to in a while. And that's a beautiful thing that comes from this movie also.
Yeah, I watched this movie by myself the other day, getting prepared for this episode. And right after, I was like, man, I just want to go hang out with my friends.
Yeah. I would love to play tag. We'll get that going. We're gonna make a video.
You're right. No tag.
We have to do amendments.
One thing that I would like to change about the movie, and it's something small, and I don't necessarily have any ways to make it different off the top of my head, but Hannibal's role in the movie felt a little forced at times to me. Like sometimes when his character, Kevin, was on the screen, I was like, when are the other characters coming back? And I think they did such a good job, like giving good backstories to everyone, and they kind of left his out. Like I didn't feel like much connection to him, and I want to. Like I definitely don't want to get rid of his character. I just want to add more depth to his character.
Yeah, I feel like he's probably the one kind of forgotten character in a sense when you think about it, because Hoagie has his storyline of being the heart of the game and being the fading heart of the game. Mm-hmm. Renner has his storyline as Jerry of being the one who's never been tagged, the perfect player for 30 years. And then you've got the love triangle with Cheryl Deakins for the other two characters, Callahan and Chili. And then
and they're both opposite sides of the spectrum. One's kind of failing at life, if you look at it that way, and then one's kind of succeeding at life, if you look at it that way, successfully in job scenarios anyways and stuff.
But Chili's also failing in his marriage as well, I guess, because he's been divorced.
Yeah.
But then you've got Sable kind of just as the more quiet narrator of the group who just kind of is on the side.
Like, what's his place? How does he fit into the group? I feel like we didn't get to see that. He kind of just seemed like the comedic relief, but it's a comedy movie, so we don't really need a comedic relief, Like, I would have liked a little bit more to his character, but I don't think that's that big of a critique, because I still enjoyed his character. Like, I definitely don't want him to just be getting gotten rid of, Like, I still want him in the movie.
I think he's so funny in the movie, even if he doesn't have as much of a motivation or backstory. Like the part where he's sitting in the chair, blocking the door, and they're showing his thoughts, and he's like, why does the word bi-weekly mean the same thing, two different things? That's just linguistically lazy. I was like, it's so funny. Hannibal Buress is hilarious.
So something that I would keep about this movie, and that is probably my favorite aspect of the movie outside of like the story, is the slow motion action shots where we hear the narration of the characters going through what they're thinking.
It's going to be my success, and because success breeds success.
And it's a great parallel to Robert Downey Jr.'s Sherlock Holmes.
It's clearly inspired by it, right?
Yes, where they go into a slow motion action shot, and Robert Downey Jr. is dissecting what his opponent's going to do, and we see it all slow, and he's like, I'm going to hit him here, I'm going to hit him here for this reason, he's going to respond this way, so I'm going to do this. And then they show it real fast, and it all wraps up, and you're like, that was awesome. Well, they did that in Tag, this comedy movie, and I think they did it so well. And we also got to hear the other characters talk at some points during the slow motion thing, and I thought it was so good. It was so funny. Aesthetically, it looked great. I'm really kind of picky on when movies and shows use their slow motion. I feel like at times it could be overused or used at the wrong beat, but this one did a great job at the slow motion and the narrations that went with it. And it really added to the characters.
Yeah, it's so clearly inspired by great action movies like Sherlock Holmes. And like right from the start, when Jeremy Renner starts where Jerry starts using that
like,
thought process.
Hello, boys. Turns around.
So dramatic, and like he sells it really well because he's an actual action star.
Right.
And and then in his head he's just going, Hoagie approaches from the left, and like all the perfect like Sherlock Holmes thought process. He's also so smooth throughout the way. In that first narration where he grabs the tablecloth and like
It around him.
Like the way he jumps through the concession stand window, or he kicks the chairs down and rides them down, like he's effortlessly smooth, jumping on top of the
chairs,
the walker.
Oh yeah.
So like he's so smooth, but in real life apparently not so smooth.
At least not all the time. So Jeremy Renner is big on doing his own stunts,
which I shouldn't downplay calling him not so smooth. I mean, he's a badass.
He can definitely do things that we cannot. But he was performing one of the stunts in the church and ended up falling 20 feet and broke his elbow and his wrist or forearm, I believe. So he broke both arms.
Yeah.
And there's a picture of him with like these casts that are like removable. And he went to the doctor that day that he broke his arms, and then came back and continued shooting that night. And when you're watching interviews, everyone else in the cast is like, he's crazy. I would have taken like a week off. I would have stopped the movie, like to come and perform, because he's clearly the one driving all the action. You know, the action of this movie is on Jeremy's shoulders, and now he's having to perform most of the movie with broken arms. Like, that's crazy.
To be fair to the other actors, though, I do see moments in the film where they are doing some of their own stunts. Like, that's Ed Helms' face getting blasted with the donuts in slow motion. And then when in that same scene, when you see John Hamm's character, Callahan, sliding on the floor to get the tag from Hoagie, I believe.
Yep.
It's him. It's a forward-facing shot of his face doing the slide.
Yep.
So he does a slide and then a slide cancel and steps back up. So pretty cool for them to do those scenes as well, even if they're not as advanced as Jeremy Renner stunts. Also, that tag he takes from Hoagie, he tag backs him, or tags him back when they're then standing outside the concession stand and Chili's saying, "It's a fake miscarriage, tag me," and he's like, "Oh, I missed." He slaps Hoagie, who was the last person to tag him. So that's an unintentional mistake in the movie,
and no one was tagged in between.
Nope.
Interesting.
Bob has the tag from there on until he tags back Hoagie.
Interesting. Well, I guess sometimes the law gets broken and evaded. He was sneaky about it.
It was kind of a larger than life scenario when they thought she was having a miscarriage, which that's a crazy plot twist on its own before everything with Hoagie is. That scene is also like
this isn't a fucking game.
It's the acting is good there. The scene is outrageous but also funny. Like Chili just being like, I think that's the funniest line in the movie, even if it's terrible, when he says, "I'm going to be so mad if she doesn't have a miscarriage." And Sable's like, he's like, "You don't say that. You think it. You don't say it."
He says it repeatedly too throughout the movie. That's fun.
I'm not saying that that's what you deserve, but what I am saying is that's what you get. So that's a big thing too that I want to talk about is all of the actors, especially Jake Johnson, are playing the same character they always play. Like, I have no qualms with that. I love when Adam Sandler does it, but Jake Johnson, I love New Girl. I've seen New Girl probably 4 or 5 times the whole show all the way through. He plays Nick in that show, and he's hilarious. But he's playing Nick in this, and he also plays Nick in The Mummy, and kind of plays Nick when he voices Spider-Man. And then John Hamm is playing the corporate business executive, like in Mad Men, or he's kind of the uptight professional guy in The Town. Like, is a little bit different in Baby Driver, but even then he's kind of like came from the business world. Like, they reference that that's who he was as a Wall Street guy or something. So. And Hannibal, the neurotic, soft-spoken guy. It's the same thing he played in Daddy's Home. Like, they're all playing themselves. Ed Helms is playing the same person he is in The Office.
Right? Directors and producers see someone performing in another movie that's similar to their movie, and they're like, they'd be perfect for my role.
I think it's rare for it to happen 5 times, though, in the same film. Because Jeremy Renner, too, is playing the, stereotypical action star. So, like, all 5 of them are playing their typecast role, which I feel like isn't always that common. But there's a reason they have these typecast roles. It's because they're good at it, and that's why I think they excel in the film. So it's not a complaint for me.
Yeah, I think the second thing outside of the slow motion that I really like about this movie, and it's like small little details, is that they have amendments and rules to the game of tag.
I love it with rules. Like I love Zombieland. I love when there's rules.
Like whenever I play a game, I'm a stickler for the rules because they were made for a reason, you know, and like it's to make the game work, you know, and I love making up new rules and kind of evolving things as they go. Like I love playing different board games and then adapting it and making my own version of it.
Yeah, my favorite amendment is the one at the end where Jerry says girls should be playing. Like bring everyone into the game. The game is a thing of fun and love and joy. Why not bring everyone into it? So I love that little flutter at the end.
Yeah, great movie. Andrew, do you have any other?
I have my source code segment.
That's right. That's what I was going to ask.
So I went ahead, like a nerd, and I read the Wall Street Journal article that this movie is based on to try and get a touch of the source of the material.
Who the actual characters are.
In the source code segment, we like to talk about the source material for the story. So it's all basically based on this Wall Street Journal article, a true story of a group of actually 10 friends. So some differences for real life in the movie. In real life, it's 10 friends. In the movie, it's a group of 5. In real life, they were playing it for 23 years at the time of the article. In the movie, they were playing it for 30. In the movie, they seem to have been playing this game continuously since they were like in elementary school, whereas in real life, they started this when they were at Gonzaga Preparatory School. When they were in high school, they would run around and tag each other for fun out there. And then one of them got tagged last. He was the last one to be it. And then years later, one day when they're adults, they got together and were reminiscing on how his career ended with him being the last one to ever be tagged. And one of them came up with the idea of, well, why don't we start playing tag again? And from there they formulated the idea of doing it every month. In the real life, they did it in February, whereas in the movie they did it in May. So a lot of these elements of the story are real. The corporate exec that Bob Callahan is based on is named Brian Dennehy in real life. And they truly did get in depth into it. Not as in depth as Jerry stringing his friends up from trees in the movie, but they did recruit the help of their spouses, their friends and family members, and their coworkers, going as far as having security or office personnel not allow people into the office in the month of February. One of the members would take trips to Hawaii in February, partly for the reason of avoiding being tagged. One of the members once refused the call for help from a coworker that had a flat tire on the side of the road because it was in February and he was afraid that one of his friends was setting a trap for him. One of them in real life...
Was it a trap?
I don't think it was. The article didn't specifically mention, but it seemed like it wasn't. But one of them jumped out of a trunk at one point. Their friend's trunk, they climbed in, jumped out. They scared his wife so bad that she fell back on the curb and fractured her ankle. So this game gets really intense. Obviously, we see at the end of the movie in the clips that they're tagging each other in the shower, dressing up as mascots to sneak up on each other, dressing up as old ladies. And they all have their own diverse lives and careers, just like in the movie. They spread out across the country. Some live in Texas, Boston, Denver, Spokane. And one of them even became a priest and moved to Montana. So that was the ending point of the article. Is the guy said, one of them said, I try to tag somebody who hasn't been tagged in a long time, because he was the last one from last year. So that's why they asked him the question. So he said, I think I'm going to go after Father because he lives in Montana now. So he's a little bit harder to reach, but he hasn't been tagged in a while. So it's so cute and beautiful and fun. These guys really are the representative of everything that is shown in this movie, of the spirit of youth and just pure childlike fun.
That's awesome. What a great story. What a great movie. I'm really glad that we did an episode on this movie, so we had an excuse to rewatch it.
Yes.
I really like when we're able to find the time to watch the movies right before we do these episodes and stuff, and I'm glad this movie came up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we finally covered a comedy. We're trying to branch out. We like all kinds of things, just like I'm assuming you guys out there listening do. So comment and let us know what you want to hear about next so we can cover it.
Yeah, so Andrew, that's
a wrap.